There's your intro.
Blah, 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 blah. Welcome to episode 74 of the Backlot 605 podcast. I'm Porky Pig. Join with me on the line is Bugs Bunny himself, Brian Mensing.
What's up?
What's up? I am your host, Casey Kelderman, actually.
Hey,
But yeah,
hey,
we're doing
I'm a
the.
host there too. Just don't forget me.
You are the host. Yeah, you are Mr. Bugs Bunny this week
Yes.
because we are talking Space Jam.
No, we're not.
Oh no, we're not. We should do so. What we're doing here, I don't know what we're doing, but with all this coronavirus stuff going on, we still have to do We're still doing an episode every week, and things have been thrown into turmoil. With all that, because we usually relay the main topic to something going on in the movie world that is relevant to a movie coming out, maybe a big piece of movie news. But yeah, we've had to go back into the archives of, hey, we need an episode, what to do on a rainy day type of episode. So that's this week. And going forward, we're going to mix it up a little bit. But this week, we're going to be talking our favorite movie vehicles. Because
why not?
Why not? I think this is actually one of the ideas we first wrote down, like, when we started this, like a year and a half ago. Is that how long it's been? Like a year and a half? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was one of those ideas we threw down on the sheet of paper that we're like, maybe we'll get to it someday.
Yeah, and
today's the day.
Today is that day.
Yeah. So with that being said, we're gonna be doing like I don't know. I think like lists seem pretty fun, but I think going forward, we're also gonna be looking at singular movies like per episode. So be on the lookout for that.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Do it like a good deep dive into a film. You know, get a recent good watching it, get it fresh in our minds, and let's talk about it and what was good, what was bad, what was ugly.
I do. So speaking of ugly, I think I want to pitch to you a movie that we should talk about in the next few weeks.
Not The Room.
Space Jam.
Okay, and why are we going to do Space Jam?
Because I mean, we brought up Bugs Bunny just at the top here, and Space Jam is the greatest movie ever made. So we should probably talk about it at least some point on the podcast.
Well, we're gonna have to. We are getting Space Jam 2 at some point here, depending on all this going on, and at some point here, because LeBron James wants to be wants to be Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I think that would be a fun one to do it on.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bill
anyway,
Murray, worth it.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do a Space Jam episode. We'll save all our thoughts for that episode. Be on the lookout for that in the next coming weeks. But if you have a movie that you would like us to talk about, drop a comment or send us a message or whatever on our social media pages, and just let us know what you want us to talk about and discuss or revisit and talk about those. Yeah, so just reach out to us. We're looking for ideas.
Definitely.
But Brian.
But Casey.
How's quarantine for you?
I haven't left my house since, yesterday actually. But unless I actually have any reason to go outside, I won't have to go outside for like 2 days, and it'll be weird. And it looks so nice outside.
It is. It's beautiful outside right now.
I'm torn. It's like I want it to be nice, that maybe things will be better and look semi-normal, whatever the case is, can go for a walk or something like that. But at the same time, too, it's like, why couldn't this have happened like 3 months ago when it was cold and chilly and we didn't want to go outside anyway?
Yeah, that's true. I haven't left the house besides going to work in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, so it's been a regular March and April for me. Besides not going to the movies, which sucks, and I'm starting to feel it. You just get the itch, like, I just need to go out to the theater and watch a movie, and we're not going to get that for a while, which sucks.
No, we're not, and I'm right there with you. And I think it's funny is there's probably a couple of people I think that are on our crew and whatnot that are probably feeling that itch even more than we are.
Derek, how are you holding up? Are you okay?
Is he in a fetal position in the corner of his house going, I can't make it to the theater?
Must see Trolls 2 in the theater. Oh, Yeah, I again that was. It's just like you're so used to doing all these things, and all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, you can't go out to the theater, you can't go out shopping, or you can't go out to eat. Like it's weird, just a
Yeah,
weird feeling.
definitely, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't go shopping for Funko Pops. Like it's just depressing.
Well, the good thing is at least those you can get online.
That is true. But I
Um,
like going to the store. I like to physically touch my Funko Pops.
you like to
That
touch
sounded
them.
gross and weird, but it's just what I like.
You like to touch them.
I like to touch them, my little bobbleheads.
Speaking of beautiful Funkos, oh, I know it's one of those things. It's things that you want to do and places you want to go, and you're just like, hey, I even thought I had to go to the Verizon store here the other day, and the one that I passed by it looked like it was close up tighter than drum, and I'm thinking, well, what happens if there's an issue with my phone? What am I supposed to do? You can't always just do everything online.
I know. I'm wondering because I'm like, what if I need a haircut? Am I just gonna grow my hair out like a wild man now?
No, you'll just have your SO go ahead and just cut it for you. But on that side note, I was intending to get one cut myself, and I definitely am looking a little too shagadelic, and I'm way past due.
Yeah, I think we should all like make a pact that we just grow all our hair out so we look like Robin Williams in Jumanji when he wakes up, and I think that's what we have to do. We all have to look like that by the end of quarantine,
Well, maybe, I guess.
looking like a bunch of straggly homeless men yelling, "What year is it?"
My problem is that I can't grow a Robin Williams Jumanji beard. It's just not. I'm just not capable of it. So I don't know what we're gonna do then.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's get away from this quarantine stuff because it's depressing, it's sad, it's everywhere,
it is.
and we want to provide something a little different. We want to provide some happiness, some
Happy.
spark, some energy,
Some happy, happy, joy, joy.
some happy, happy, joy, joy, the stuff you can't smoke that we provide for your ear holes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about our favorite movie vehicles. And so to do this, we each kind of have a rough top 10 list, 10 vehicles we want to talk about.
Very
Um,
rough.
Yeah, and this isn't really like this isn't going to be like this is the definitive best vehicles ever. Period. No ifs, ands, buts about it. No, this is Brian's personal top 10 and my personal top 10. It's as simple as that.
I would even go as far as with mine to be like, these are notable ones that I think people should know about if they didn't realize it.
Yeah, it's just gonna be we're gonna have fun talking about our favorite vehicles and the movies that those vehicles belong to, and we can kind of gush about some movies maybe we haven't talked about on the show or haven't talked about in a while. So
Yeah.
yeah, should we jump into our favorite vehicles
Favorite.
here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's vroom vroom on over to our top 10 list then.
Bum, bum. This is where you need some intro music.
Vrin, vrin.
Bang, bang.
We don't need it. We'll just provide sound effects. That's all you need.
Oh, there you go.
So do you want me to kick it off then?
Go for it.
All right, so I'll kind of work my way up to my personal favorite. So I'll start kind of whatever would be number 10 then, I guess. I'm going to go with the Creepers truck, the Chevy heavy duty truck from Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, that is creepy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Of,
I had
and
to.
of course, Casey, right out of the gate. Let's get a horror. Let's get something from a horror film on there.
And I'm going to get it out of the way because it is the only horror film vehicle on this list for me, surprisingly enough. But let's get that one out there because, again,
I'm literally in shock right now.
yeah, the creeper himself, he's a creepy character. He's a very iconic character. But I
Yes.
think just as iconic as him is the truck that he's driving.
Yes, very much so. Especially just the interactions that he has with the different characters throughout the show. It's just this beaten down truck, and yes, I would have to say that is a very solid choice.
And even more so, he's like the creepy James Bond with that car because there's so many gadgets and booby traps connected to the truck
Yeah.
that he uses.
Yes.
Uh, I I believe it's the third one. I think uses the truck the most, and that was kind of the selling point of the third one. Besides that, it's the return of the creeper. The second one ditches the car, I think, completely. I don't think it's in the second film at all.
I
But
honestly I don't remember, and I say that oddly enough because I've seen the second one. It's the third one I've never seen.
it's not
Um,
great.
but even from the sake of the second one, it is such a pivotal vehicle and kind of driving force, no pun intended, for that film.
Yeah, and I think the third one definitely ratchets up the booby traps that are involved with the truck. The truck, pretty much, the truck kills just as many people as the creeper does in the third film.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and I mean the first Jeepers Creepers I still think is for the most part a modern day classic. It's going to be entering its what 2001 I think the first one came out, so it's nearing its 20-year anniversary. And I think it's just one of those under talked about horror films in the last 20 years for many reasons, including the behind the scenes stuff. We don't need to talk about that. But besides that, I think
Way to
it's
go
just
to
I
bring
think
it up.
it's the creeper in the room. Okay, you have to bring it up. Literally a creeper in the room. But I think the first film was great. I think it is a modern horror day classic, a modern horror classic, and yeah, I think it's definitely a character that needs to be brought up more. And the vehicle that he drives is just as much a part of the character as anything else.
Oh yes, definitely.
All right, what do you got for your number 10?
You know what? I think just for the sake of argument, I think I'm gonna keep this in a little bit of the that doesn't fit. Keep this in the horror realm, just because I actually myself happen to have one on my list as well. Which, when you tell me that you literally have that as your only horror vehicle on your list, I'm kind of sad by that actually. Because this one I came through and I immediately thought this is something I need to have on my list. But the Plymouth Fury from Christine.
Yeah, I didn't want to have too much horror on here, and yeah, Christine is obviously a very iconic vehicle to have.
Very much so. I mean, just something about that, uh, the headlights coming up, and to know that you could, you make mention of Jeepers Creepers that that truck is an essential part of the film. When you look at Christine, when you realize your villain of the film is the car. How many movies do we get the opportunity where the actual vehicle itself is the bad guy? It's not a person, it's not some alien or whatever the case is, it's literally a possessed car.
Yeah, and for Christine, what stands out to me is the Carpenter score that goes along with the movie. The
Yeah.
score is just killer. I have it on vinyl, and I just pop it on every once in a while, just when I'm doing something else, and have it on in the background. It's just a killer score. And the car, yeah, the car itself, like, is just a very iconic look, and
Hmm.
having that attached to this period horror film really makes it stand out. There's the great scene where the car is destroyed and it rebuilds itself. I'm like,
Yep.
God, that's such a fantastic scene.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't get to see stuff like that anymore. It's not a thing, and it's kind of sad. I mean, we have so many iconic vehicles that have been brought up and whatnot, and they tend to become a kind of a secondary part of a film and whatnot, and realize that there are very iconic vehicles to many movies, and they just don't get the love they deserve.
No, that's true. And I mean, when we're talking Carpenter films, this is a very underrated one in there too, along with King films. Because I don't know about you, what of those two names do you think of when you think of the name Christine, Carpenter or King?
For me personally, Stephen King. But that's because I also know that it's a Stephen King story, Stephen King novel, that kind of thing. To be perfectly honest, when I think of John Carpenter, I'm thinking of things of like, Halloween and stuff like that. I I see is it's a King story with the John Carpenter flair. But yeah, for me, it screams Stephen King.
Yeah, whenever I'm on the opposite end actually, because whenever I think of it, I think of Carpenter and the score.
Well,
But and oftentimes I forget it's a King novel at first because I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty Carpenter thing, and then you're like, wait, oh, it's a King. It was a King novel first, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a fun mashup between two icons of genre, and one that I wish we got more of the collaboration between King and Carpenter.
Oh, I think that would have been a fantastic collaboration.
Yeah, I think they were two juggernauts that probably would butt heads a little too much. Too many alphas in the room. It's what I'm guessing probably happened going after Christine here, and
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's two alphas in the room, other than the fact that both these gentlemen are very passionate about the work that they put out, whether it be good or bad, because they both have had their goods and bads. But they're both very passionate about their work, and so I think that's more or less what it is, and that probably gives us for less room of give and take, maybe.
yeah, I think both have a very distinct vision when it comes to their work. And
Yes.
I mean, for Christine, I think it lined up perfectly on both of what they were trying to accomplish.
Agreed. Agreed. All
All
right. So, what
right.
is your next one, Casey?
I'll stick with the period type of thing. We'll segue into that. I'm
Okay.
gonna go with the Ford Deluxe from Grease, aka Greased Lightning.
Oh, goodness gracious. Because we're talking about the one at the end, the one that they rebuild throughout the film, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. See, and that's part of me like, okay, I definitely agree and understand its essence of the film and whatnot, but right now I had to ask you to confirm just because for me it's one of those things. It's a very iconic looking car in that movie, but it doesn't get enough love that I think it probably deserves to the point where I'm like, there's so many beautiful classic cars in that movie. You're like, now which one? Which one?
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
B-
So
Brian, it's the flying car. The car that frickin' flies at the end.
I know that's why we understand that this is all a delusion of Sandy, and she's actually in the hospital when she got hurt, and this all.
She, yeah. Have you? I'm sure you're alluding to the conspiracy behind Greece and uh, the people who think that the opening of the film is actually when she dies, and the whole thing is her like on her way to heaven, like
Yep, yep.
like she drowned in the water. I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, the car from Greece is a very iconic vehicle. Um, yeah, you pretty much get it. I mean, this is kind of a through line throughout the movie: the car getting rebuilt, and you finally get the payoff at the end with Danny and Sandy driving off into the sunset, literally into the sunset, in the car. And then, I mean, it's the centerpiece of maybe the most iconic musical number in the film. Definitely top three of the film with the Grease Lightning sequence where they're
Right.
rebuilding the car, and it's definitely the most over the top musical number of the film, and the most like magical, mystical, over the top version of that song. And yeah, this is Grease is one of my favorite movies ever. I love Grease so much, and so I had to have this car on here. And I mean, the car even gets a sweet drag race during the climax of the film, so that's always really cool.
Mhm.
You could even thrown the rival gangs car in here that has the blades that pop out.
Right. And that's
Those are
that's
sweet too.
and that's where I was like, for the sake of you could almost put Grease in one of those categories of a film of a multitude of classic in cars that you remember just because you know, yes, Grease Lightning in itself is kind of like the cherry on the top of the sundae and whatnot, but there are so many beautiful cars in that film that it doesn't matter if it's whether it's Grease Lightning or any of them here. You want to appreciate it just for all of the vehicles that are in it.
And of course, the Pink Ladies car I think is very iconic as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a I think Cars is an underlying, I don't know, theme or motif of this film. It's very much in the landscape, in the DNA of Greece to have
Oh,
the vehicles in there.
completely agree. I mean, come on, based on the fact that they are. Oh my God, what are they? I'm being a completely. What do they call themselves? The greasers,
The,
right?
the
No,
T-Birds.
the T. No, no. Oh, oh yeah. That that they you can definitely tell that these guys are the guys that are supposedly supposed to be like the 50s. I work on my cars kind of thing, blah blah blah. So I mean, it definitely kind of ties into all that.
There is since you brought that up, I have to bring up like my favorite moment of this movie that no one ever talks about. It's the scene between uh, Kinnicky and John Travolta's character Danny, and they're basically it's right before the race, and they're like man, like no matter what happens here, I love you, man, and they give each other a hug quick, and then they like step off and they start combing their hair and put a cigarette in their mouth, like they're too cool to hug each other and say that they're best friends and love each other. I'm like,
Right.
even dirty greasers have a heart. I love that moment.
Yes, I would have to completely concur with that.
All right, that is Greased Lightning. Greased
Grease that.
Lightning. All right, what do you got next?
Well, I'm gonna bring it up here. Maybe a couple. Not well. At least in terms of timeline of the movie itself, because Grease is a little bit, it dates, even though based on when it was made, it's a throwback and whatnot. Um, but I look at this particular car, and anytime, a lot of people even just see the logo to the car is associated with this film, is the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit. Like,
Excellent pick.
because I mean, again, anytime you look at that Firebird logo, anybody who's doing it right and doing it classic, they're doing that straight black with the bright gold phoenix on the or Firebird, excuse me, on the hood, and they basically everybody tries to recreate that vintage Smokey and the Bandit car.
Yeah, you go to any car fair or any car showcase, and there is always a car from Smokey and the Bandit there.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
I would.
I haven't seen Smokey and the Bandit forever. It's like I needed to do a rewatch. I watched this in like I believe it was in high school when I first watched Smokey and the Bandit.
I don't know if I've even seen all of them.
Oh, I know I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, I can guarantee I've seen the first one because, well, the first one's amazing.
Yeah, it's a classic car. And again, I think when I brought up the creeper, where it's just as much as part of the character as anything, the car
The,
is just as much of a character as any other person in the movie.
I would have to concur with that. It pretty much Smokey would not be who he is without the car.
Yeah, I think it's Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, and the car. Like that's the three leads.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, that car is definitely a centerpiece to all of that.
All right, so I'm gonna segue here because we're in the year 1977, which was
A
a
year.
pretty big year for movies. Brian, did you know that?
No, I didn't, and I would like to just make myself stand corrected that Bert was not Smokey; he was the Bandit.
Who said? Did I say that, or
No,
did
I
you?
said I
Oh,
called him Smokey. I'm like, wait a
no,
minute, I
he's the
know
bandit.
that's wrong. No, he's
Yeah.
Bandit.
So 1977, a little movie called Star Wars came to theaters, changed the landscape of film forever, and the most iconic vehicle from that film is the Millennium Falcon, which is my number 8 on my list. Then
Wow, you went to a galaxy far, far away.
I did. I went to the rusty hunk of junk that is the Millennium Falcon, the ship that has appeared in many of the Star Wars films. Of course, most notably in the original trilogy, and making a triumphant return in the sequel trilogy that we got.
Don't forget
Uh,
Solo.
and it was also in Solo, which implies that the robot that Lando, he did stuff with that robot, and that robot's in the Millennium Falcon, and it's tainted the legacy of it.
this
Ew.
this is th- this is very true.
It is true. It
It
all
is.
happened. Lando after robot.
Hey, you know what? Things are different in a galaxy far, far away.
That they are, but whenever you think of so Han Solo and Chewbacca, the dirty smugglers, the scoundrels,
The
and
dirty
of course
duo.
the dirty duo. I like that. But then giving them this beaten up, dirty, wretched gross, grimy ship that barely runs, but somehow is like the biggest. It's like that car you see and like that your buddy had, and you knew it was a hunk of junk, and he knew it was a hunk of junk, but he still loved it and cared for it just as much as any other vehicle he could have in the world.
Uh-huh.
We all had that friend. And I think this is just a perfect representation of that kind of relationship between Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon.
That,
Because
that
it's a hunk of junk, but you know what? Damn it, it's his hunk of junk.
that is a very, very good representation of that. I would certainly say is that, throughout the, Star Wars and whatnot, there's all these pristine ships, and the Millennium Falcon, she's had her day, and she's been bolted together and screwed and modified and everything like that. But dang it, if she doesn't pull through in the end.
Exactly, and that's you know what? That's all you need in a good vehicle. That's all you need. Also,
But
if I were to if I had the chance to like sit inside any vehicle on my list, this would be the one, obviously.
the one vehicle that is probably, of everything, where it's like the one that you can't is the one that you want to do the most.
Well, I could just go to Disney World and go visit the
But
Star Wars
what I
attraction there.
and what I mean by that is the fact that at that point it's a replica. It won't
Oh
actually
yeah.
fly. I'm talking about like for
What?
what? Yeah, it won't fly. But
What's
like
the point?
I can get into the Trans Am of Smoking the Bandit. I could get into Christine. I can get into that whatever. Whereas Millennium Falcon, it's cool, but I can't drive it.
I know. I wish I could though. All right. What do you got next? You're number 8.
My number 8. Well, I would have to say, I'm gonna keep it with the classics currently at this point right now. Even though you decided to go off to a different galaxy. And I'm actually going to, and this is technically a two movie thing, kind of, sorta, is the '67 Shelby Cobra from Gone in 60 Seconds. Whether you're talking the original 1974 or even the Nick Cage remake with Angelina Jolie. Um, Eleanor is a very iconic, that specific Shelby Cobra 1967. I think it's a fastback. I don't know. Anyway, absolutely gorgeous Mustang. So many people have attempted to try to recreate it because it had that particular Cobra had a very iconic look. Same as similar to like Smoking the Bandit, where it was the straight silver with the blue racing stripes. I mean, the only thing that was really different maybe between the two movies is maybe a few different modifications for the sake of the date and time and whatnot. But I would tell anybody, if you ever get the opportunity to watch Gone in 60 Seconds, and I'm not even talking the Nick Cage and Angelina Jolie one, I'm talking the original from, like I said, I think it's like 1974. So you figure this car is literally only like 7 years old, 8 years old when they made this film. And it was even still iconic then. But one of the things about this film that is very enjoyable is it prides itself on having one of the longest car chases in cinema. It clocking it like over like 35, 40 minutes. This movie is basically a car chase. But I absolutely adore this car. I think it's an absolutely beautiful car, and I think anybody should at least get the opportunity to. Yeah, the Nick Cage one is fine and whatnot, but watch that a classic.
Yeah, I have not watched either Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, watch the first one first, or let me rephrase. Watch the original first.
Yeah, I remember parts of the Cage version because this was a VHS we had in our house for the
hmm
Cage Gone in 60 Seconds. But
The
yeah, I've
the
never
the
gone
Cage.
back to the original.
Yes, I would have to say and for the sake of VHS tapes. The original Gone in 60 Seconds is actually one of those ones. It was a weird buy that my grandpa got me back when I was a kid and whatnot. I said, "Hey, I think you'd really like, it's a suitable movie for a kid who, likes cars and Hot Wheels and stuff like that kind of thing." Um, and right now, it looks like you can go get a chance to watch it on Amazon Prime. It looks like. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely encourage you, especially if you're one of the old classic cars, because there is that aspect of the stealing of the cars and everything like that, like the Nick Cage one and whatnot. To the same where they're all named certain things and whatnot, but this one it's just, especially you're talking 1974, your newest car, even on the side of the road or whatever, is still only going to be a mid 70s. So everything's going to be basically classic cars in that film.
Brian,
Yes.
did you know that we're on a mission from God?
What? Are you making
Because
a segue I don't understand?
my number 7 is the Bluesmobile from the Blues Brothers, 1980.
And this is why we have to have these communication things here, my friend, is what I'm saying.
Do you have the Bluesmobile on there as well?
Duh.
There we go. Let's talk about it. The Blues. So yeah, the Blues Brothers. I grew up watching this movie all the time.
The
Uh,
beautiful Dodge Monaco.
I'm gonna rely on you for actually providing those because I know diddly squat about cars.
I actually had to look up what kind of car it was.
But talk about a vehicle you could own. You could own this old police car. Yeah, I mean, the Blues Brothers is one of the most iconic comedies of all time. It's one of it is the original SNL movie. Kickstarted and opened up the career for so many people: Dan Aykroyd, John Landis, John Belushi. And of course, it's just two of the most. I think when you look at iconic characters in film, especially how they relate to pop culture, I mean, you have to bring up the Blues Brothers.
Oh, definitely. Complete side note, and I haven't seen it for years and whatnot, but many years back when I worked on the other end of town, down by one of the restaurants on the northeast end of town, somebody had recreated the Bluesmobile, including the PA system on the roof.
Wow.
And anytime I had to go to that part of it, there would been times I'd be like, I'm just going to drive by because I just want to see if it's there. Like it's one of those things that vehicle has just a weird aesthetic to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's beaten down. It's seen its days. It's the Millennium Falcon of the Blues Brothers.
It is.
And especially when you have that very iconic scene in the film where if I remember correctly, it's just after they get done at the cowboy bar and they're like trying to get moving and they're like, it's nighttime, we're wearing shades, we got a half tank full of gas. um it's just, yeah, the Bluesmobile is just as much a character to that film as I think as Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi were.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to put it. I mean, with a lot of these iconic vehicles, they're very much a character in these movies, and I think the Bluesmobile is no exception. Like this movie would not be the same without that iconic vehicle. I mean, there's the great chase sequence. Like they're going through like a mall, isn't it? They're driving through a mall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
um and the one thing I would like to side note for the sake of this film, for anybody who hasn't seen it, is the fact that number one, if you haven't seen it, you're wrong. Um, is actually
well, this
is
movie's old. I mean,
I don't care. Anyway,
I recommend
is
go watch Blues Brothers.
agreed. Don't watch Blues Brothers 2000. That's a whole different thing. No, is when Dan Aykroyd and all of them made this film and whatnot, they weren't doing it to make a parody for the sake of blues. They were embracing the blues. The fact that you have cameos by people like Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, to the point where they were embracing such a beautiful culture and music of the time that they're like, what, we we're and they're still doing it to this day. I mean, Jim Belushi basically took over for his brother, and the Blues Brother as characters and the stuff that Dan Aykroyd still does today. You know, this is a character. It wasn't just a shove off. And it's like this is something that he lives and breathes, and he even does blues on its own to the point where the car, the movie, and everything like that is just, it definitely has that staple where I'm like, I'm so glad SNL made this happen.
Yeah, and this is like when even you look at what they were on SNL, they were just a musical group. Like they weren't there was no they weren't in any sketches. It was literally just Aykroyd and Belushi doing blues and singing and dancing. Like that's all
Yes.
it was. It wasn't a
Exactly.
sketch, and to make an entire movie out of that was a kind of a ballsy move to do back then.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when everybody's got this expectation of who Belushi was, especially post, regards like Animal House and stuff like that. Dan Aykroyd and both of them are making huge waves on the SNL and the sketch comedy. I mean, yes, the movie is definitely funny, but it definitely has its roots in the blues.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at because I'm like, this has got to be one of the first starring roles for Aykroyd on his end,
I guess
and
I don't.
the biggest film for him before that would have been 1941 with him and Belushi.
1940. Oh, for a second there, I was like, you were talking the year. I'm like, he's not that
He's
old.
that old. Aykroyd is that old. No, so yeah, it was a star making performance for him. Further push Belushi into superstardom. Yeah, it's definitely one of those iconic films that I need to revisit here in the next while.
Yeah, this definitely is one of those examples of showing just how much John Belushi was a man lost well before his time.
Yep. One last thing, and kind of continuing our thoughts as we're going through this idea for an episode: SNL movies. There we go. Just throwing that out there.
All right, well, write that one down.
All right. So you had Blues Brothers as well.
Yes.
Do you
All
want me
right,
to go with my next one, or you want to go next?
I'll take one here. Um, so I decided, being the fact that I've been attempting to binge watch some films and whatnot here, and so far I'm 3 into 24. Is the Aston Martin that is part of James Bond. This one is a little bit of a looser thing, just because as Bond has progressed over the last 20 or 25 years, after over the last almost 60 years, is that centerpiece of James Bond has always been for his vehicles. Has been that Aston Martin. At least once they finally started taking off, because we want to pretend those first two Bond films didn't happen.
I like
Um,
From Russia with Love.
oh, that was such a hard watch. I'm sorry.
Mm.
Oh, I'm needing to get into Thunderball and continue my work, but Goldfinger
Goldfinger's great, right?
Goldfinger was definitely better than the previous two. Um, but this Goldfinger's what brought us the introduction of the Bond's Aston Martin with all the gadgets that M puts or that they put in there, and as they have progressed through the last how many decades, that car has always been the the drive the driving force of James Bond. You know, you yeah, I mean, even to this day, I mean, it's 2020, and Lego, comes out with a Bond car, and it's an Aston Martin. It's just when you look at that car and you think of Bond, it's an Aston Martin. So it has progressed, and because obviously you can't. Can you imagine James Bond trying to drive like a '67 Aston Martin at this point right now? I mean, it's doable, but at some point, they've upgraded to the new versions and whatnot, but it's still been that core vehicle.
Yeah, I this is just as much of an iconic character, and definitely the the companion to the James Bond character because of. I mean, and Goldfinger especially. This is the introduction to the gadgets,
Exactly.
the villain monologues. The Aston Martin is where it comes in Goldfinger, and yeah, this is the car, the Bond car that everybody thinks of when you think of the James Bond car.
Definitely.
All right, good pick, good pick. All of those Bond films on Amazon Prime right now.
Yeah.
Just
Up
throwing that out there.
except for what? Isn't it the Daniel Craig ones are
Yeah, I
missing?
think everything up through the Brosnan ones, I believe, are on there.
Yes. All the way through HD and 4K when available.
Yes, I. You're going to be working through those. I'll try to be working through those as well, since I have not watched them all. I remember watching them as a kid and remember nothing.
Well, I would like to say this. Feel privileged to the fact that you're going to watch them or attempt to try to watch them with as many as there are. I've literally been sitting with 24 Bond films on my shelf, and I have only maybe watched a quarter of them from beginning to end.
We got work to do, Brian.
We do, considering the fact that the first three that I have watched, which is the first three Sean Connery ones, is the first time I'd ever watched the Sean Connery ones, and I feel sad inside that I hadn't, but now I see those first two why I hadn't.
I'll still stand by From Russia with Love.
All right, what is your next one?
All right, so we're on number 6 here.
We're 6.5.
I'm gonna go with the GT Spider from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
You see, this is why we need to talk, my friend.
Hey, if you have it, good enough. We're
Yep.
good to go.
Yep, I've got that one on my list as well because, well, it's the beautiful Ferrari that you will never forget from that film.
Cameron's dad's vehicle in the film that they use on their day off. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, one of my favorite movies ever. There is, of course, the iconic scene where they're trying to reverse the miles on it by putting the car in reverse with the wheels off the ground. Such a great scene. And then you have
Because that is such because even as a younger kid who wasn't even able to drive yet, watching that film, looking at going, these guys don't really think this is gonna work, do they?
Hey, I mean, Ferris is a smart guy, but I guess he can't know everything.
I would also like to point out one of my favorite scenes of this film doesn't even it has the car, but it does not have the three leads. It doesn't have them, but it is the two guys that they
The
valet
two
the car,
valets,
the
yeah.
two valets, and they go on the joyride. And as they hit that peak of the road, and they just kind of go airborne, and it's just in slow mo, and the look on their face. Oh, that is absolutely beautiful scene.
Yeah, it's such a great iconic scene. So many iconic scenes in this movie, especially with the car. I love the great sequence in the movie where Cameron realizes how many miles that have been put on the car, and he just yells, and it like zooms out of Chicago.
Yup. Oh, so
Yeah,
good.
and then the scene provide one thing that is not brought up a lot, I think, in Ferris Bueller's Day Off is the emotional core of this movie, especially with the Cameron character, because Ferris, he doesn't grow. He's the same character. He's a douchebag at the beginning, a douchebag at the end. But I love Ferris Bueller. But Cameron's the emotional core of this movie, and his big climactic moment, his big character building moment, is with the car when he starts kicking the shit out of it and kicks it off the ledge, and it falls into this forested area behind his house. And I'm like, that's such a iconic scene. And then him saying, "No, Ferris, like this is my thing to do. I'm taking the blame for this, not you this time."
Yeah, because he's like, you know what? He can't live in that shell anymore that he's so used to. Oh yeah, I would definitely say. Well, I'm not going to argue that how you say that Ferris Bueller doesn't grow in this. I do think he does grow a bit when he realizes and sees kind of where Cameron is to that. And I do think that all three characters kind of grow, but I do have to agree that Cameron is the one that has the most growth in the film, and it is literally wrapped with the respect to that car.
So we talked about this with Grease, the conspiracy behind that film,
Yeah.
and a way to interpret it. Have you heard the Ferris Bueller one?
No, I can't say I have.
Okay, so the conspiracy, the version of this movie that people watch it through this lens is that Ferris is never there. Ferris is the alter ego of Cameron, who Cameron actually wants to be. So he's the version he wants to be. He has this girlfriend, but doesn't know how to really talk to her and interact with her. And of course, he wants the confidence of Ferris, and he just does not have it. And that's why the big climactic moment happens, and he says, "No, Ferris, like I'm gonna take this on. This is on me." And that's kind of like the culmination of him finally embracing the Ferris that is inside of him, and being the outgoing, more responsible, more mature version, the full version of Cameron Fry by the end of the movie.
You know, my response to that is whoever came up with that conspiracy theory probably did it after they saw Fight Club. or
I mean, I don't believe the conspiracy. I watched
well,
it one like after I heard that I watched the movie through that lens. I'm like, yeah, this was fun, but I'm like, that's not what they were going for. It's fun to
no,
watch it through that lens.
no, it's definitely. Do you do you? Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you realize that this is a or a John Hughes movie, that was not the kind of movies he was making. He was
No.
making your typical teen romantic comedies and whatnot. No, no, and that's why I say it's like whoever came up with that conspiracy theory did it in the late '90s, early 2000s. Who's like, dude, I was on a bunch of shrooms and I just watched this, and then I think Ferris Bueller's the same thing.
What if Ferris wasn't there?
Yeah, no.
I don't know. It's a fun way to watch it. So if you want to revisit Ferris Bueller's Day Off and watch it through that lens, go ahead and rewatch Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that to poor Cameron and Ferris.
Let my Cameron go. Let's move on to your next pick here. Your number 6.
Let's get it pulled up here. Yeah, well, let me see here. Talked about that. We talked about that. I think I'm gonna go a little bit slightly more modern day, kind of get it out of the way. This kind of is the same respect of when I make mention about movies that have like a core amount of vehicles and whatnot. But I'm going to actually gonna go with the bright orange, beautiful Toyota Supra from the original Fast and the Furious movie, the one that basically helped launch the franchise.
All right, those listening, go take a shot. Brian has mentioned Fast and the Furious.
Because I had to.
Yeah.
But see,
to be fair, this is my favorite car from the series as well.
yes, I mean, and that's the part that's fun about it is there you have the orange Supra and whatnot. There is that classic Charger from the original and whatnot. And if there is anything, one thing, if we're gonna talk about movie vehicles, and especially for the sake of classics to modern to imports to domestics to all of these different things, if there's one thing that can be said is the Fast and the Furious has definitely brought the entire franchise has brought an entire means of showing all of these beautiful cars to maybe audiences that would never even know what these cars are. Help build, a car community essentially around these, cars that they have brought forth. I mean, did you ever think that you would see an action movie with where there's a Bentley involved, that sort of thing and whatnot. So, but no, I think to know that if I remember correctly, the price tag after modifications, that 96, I think it's a 96 Supra, was close to like an almost $200,000 car because of all the modifications on
All right, is that your pick then? I don't have much to say. I just think it's a cool looking car. That's it.
it. You're just like, it's cool, it's cool.
It's
But
cool.
I mean, but would you agree with me to say is that if it wasn't for, because I mean, yes, there's the cool little green Mitsubishi Eclipse at the beginning of the film and or whatever, like, yeah, the Eclipse, but that basically was one of the staples to it. That, do you think that if they would have just had some rum dum whatever import car and whatever, that maybe it wouldn't necessarily have done as well, it really kind of puts a staple into that film?
What's that? The paint scheme to it?
The paint scheme, yes, that car and all the just the amount of craftsmanship that went into that customized car.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to what it looks like at that point. I mean, for me, who knows nothing about cars and sticks to it, I'm like, that's just a cool car. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. It just looks cool and it goes fast.
Yes, I would have to concur with that.
All right, my number 5. I'm gonna bring in my last one that is not an actual car. It is a vehicle though. This is a boat actually, and it is the boat from Jaws, the Orca.
Oh my god. I'm. You said you didn't have it. Hey, Jaws is a horror movie. You lied to me, my friend.
Jaws is it's a lot of things. It's a perfect movie. That's I'll say that it's a perfect movie. Jaws is like I don't even know what to. It's so hard to describe Jaws. Jaws is an adventure movie. It can be a horror movie. It's a creature movie. It's a in many ways it's a comedy. Like there's so many things that work in Jaws, but yeah, the orca again, a very iconic character. Once you get to the final act of the film, it's the three-man show with them and then the boats as well. I think that's very much a big part of the character. A big character in this movie is the orca. Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those iconic boats where you'll see it and you'll see the name Orc on it and you instantly know what it's from.
Oh, definitely.
And like I mean, Jaws is one of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. It's a perfect movie. Um, Again, there's so many different different genres of film that work in tandem with this movie so perfectly. And again, when you get onto the boat at the end, it becomes this sweeping like adventure movie on the sea, and the orca is a big part of that. And yeah, once you get to hang out with Brody, Quint, and Hooper on the boat, and they get to give the iconic scene where they're showing off their scars and singing the song "Show Me the Way to Go Home." I'm tired and I want to go to bed. Yeah, the iconic scene that's been parodied and mimicked in many other films, and all taking place on that iconic boat from the film.
So this begs me to ask a question that maybe I'm asking blindly here, but you say it's a mix of genres, which I would have to completely agree, but that definitely has that horror esque part to it here for the sake of the shark itself and the death and the killing, everything like that. Would you ever want to like see Spielberg do like a full on horror movie? Do you think he's capable, or is this just not masterful enough to, or it's not like broad enough or to the scope that what is Spielberg?
I think Spielberg has done many horror movies, but they're not purely horror movies.
Yeah.
Like Jaws, Jurassic Park, in many ways Poltergeist is a Spielberg movie. And I it's just in his DNA, I don't think he can ever fully go into this is dark dramatic horror, nothing else, no Spielberg isms in it. It's just not in his DNA to produce that type of movie.
He
But
couldn't go full
which is
on.
okay.
He couldn't go full on James Wan.
No, I don't think he could. Or I couldn't imagine Spielberg making The Exorcist. Uh, but I can't imagine anyone else making Jaws.
I could get
You
behind that.
know, you know
You
what I
know,
mean.
there.
I mean, Jaws is again, Jaws is a perfect movie to me because of the Spielberg isms within this character study of this town getting tormented by this shark.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I could definitely get behind that.
But yeah, I think he definitely has those horror elements in many of his films. This scene, of course, this movie has plenty, but the one that sticks out to me is when the young boy gets pulled in by the shark, and then you just see his floaty float up to shore with a big bite taken out of it. I'm like
Hmm.
that's horror right there. Jurassic Park, anything with the Velociraptors is a horror scene. So,
Oh yeah, definitely.
all right, what do you got next?
I think I'm going to delve into the realm that is the comic book world, and I'm gonna go with the Batmobile.
Which
Uh,
one?
Take your pick. I mean, to be
I mean,
honest,
I have my pick, so.
well, I mean, the reason why I say take your pick is because, with each different iteration that is the Batman franchise, um, they all have their looks and their aesthetics and whatnot. I mean, you can't go wrong with the original 1989 um, Batmobile. Uh,
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
oh yeah, and to the point where knowing that it was originally going to be designed by H.R. Geiger and having seen what those pictures look like, I'm so glad that they didn't go that route because that thing was creepy. Um, but I mean, say what you will about the other Batman films in terms of like the Schumacher films. Um, they still had the same kind of streamline of what the Batmobile was. They were a little bit more flamboyant, a little bit more wacky and whatnot, which is saying something concerning the fact they went from Tim Burton to Joel Schumacher. Um, but I mean, look at the Nolan brand of the Batmobiles. They kind of went away from the traditional Batmobile look and going with the tumbler and whatnot, but it served its purpose and it has a very iconic look for that subset of the Batman franchises. So I almost think that in kind of the same light as the Aston Martin from the Bond movies kind of evolved with the way that the movies themselves have evolved, so has the Batmobile. Um, I mean, everything, even including up to Justice League and the Batmobile. That is the Ben Affleck version and whatnot. But I do know that most people, if you're talking the Batmobile, they immediately gravitate towards the definitely the 1989 Batmobile.
Yeah, I like you do bring up a good point. I can't imagine Christian Bale's Batman roaming around Gotham in the Tim Burton Batmobile. It just wouldn't
Correct.
would not fit. But as far as look and aesthetic goes, the Burton one is my favorite. The Tumbler it fits for what Nolan's doing. It just to me it's too much of a military look, and too much of the big bulking one. Where the Batmobile from like the '89 Batman just has the right. It just looks like the Batmobile. Like when I picture the Batmobile, that's the first image that comes to my mind is that version.
Yeah.
And that could just be because I like that aesthetic of Gotham and the Batman universe the most, and that's
Yeah.
probably why it fits out to me or sticks out to me in that way.
Yeah, and I would have to completely agree with that because I mean, if you look at like say the Tumbler from the Nolan films and whatnot, the route that he went with going, hey, this is a predetermined vehicle from the R and D department from the military subsection of my R&D, you know, that seems like the kind of thing that the Nolan Batman would do. He wasn't necessarily trying to make something new, but to use the tools that he already had available to him. So I can certainly see that, and I agree with you. Like, can you imagine how out of place a Nolan Batman would have looked like? Even better yet, not even '89 Batmobile, but even like say Joel Schumacher with the bright blue um, neons in the wheel wells, that sort of thing. It would not have worked.
Yeah, and I think the obviously the Affleck one kind of took off after the Christian Bale version of the Batmobile. They look very
Yeah.
much similar. So
Yes, and then you
yeah,
look
I
at
mean,
And I was gonna say, and then you get into the teasers that we've received for the Batman with
hmm
Robert Pattinson, which definitely looks very it, Batmobile looks like it was built by Dominic Toretto.
it does.
So I guess we'll kind of see how that goes. But if we're
hmm
going for a younger Batman who hasn't quite figured it out, kind of thing, that makes total sense to me. The fact that it basically would be a modified existing car, kind of Batman meets James Bond, if you will.
Or Batman meets Fast and the Furious.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah, Batman or Bruce Wayne says, "Hey, Dominic Toretto, I need you to build me a Bond car," and that's what we got.
it's okay. You're part of my family.
Exactly.
All right, so I had the Batmobile on my list as well. So let's move on to we got about three left here. So we'll go top threes here. Brian, I'm assuming you'll have at least one of you will for sure have
I have
one
two. I
of.
have two left.
Okay, so I'm assuming this is probably one of them. So we'll get this one out of the way. Ecto One from Ghostbusters.
Yep, that's on my list. Did you? Of course, you expected that to be on my list.
Yes, obviously. I mean, it is one of, if not the most iconic movie vehicle ever.
One of them, but then again, that's why we're talking about these.
Yes. So yeah, the Ecto One again, one of those vehicles where I'm like, yeah, I want to own that just because it's cool. I just want the Ghostbusters car. Yeah, this is again we talk about vehicles that are very much a character. This is very much a character in the film, very much the fifth Ghostbuster, if you will, within the group. So yeah, Ghostbusters Ecto One. Why does this stand out to you?
You say the fifth Ghostbuster, and I immediately was like, so
Sorry, Rick Moranis.
that makes Tully the sixth Ghostbuster in the Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah. Sorry.
um, why does this vehicle stand out to me? Well, I mean, you figure when this film came out, um, I'm literally just a kid. This is the kind of thing when we were watching it at home on a VHS and whatnot. I'm everything about the movie was perfectly fine. Even the demon dogs, they didn't scare me anything like that. But for some reason, that uh, librarian at the very beginning of the film, when she transforms, oh, she scared the crap out of me. Um, but it's just something about knowing that they took and has been broken down old school ambulance and modified it to this just absurdly over the top, loud, blinking lights thing, basically giving themselves. They pretty much are like, we can forego the laws of the road because we're the Ghostbusters, and here's us screaming down the road. Like, there's everything about that vehicle that breaks so many traffic laws, and they're just like, we'll let him go. It's the '80s.
There's ghosts out there, though. Come on, they gotta let them loose.
And didn't believe him at the time. And that's what's funny about that film is you hear about the congestion of traffic that is New York City. Why did the Ghostbusters never run into traffic?
Yeah. Do you think in New York City, if you saw that vehicle coming behind you, would you actually get out of the way?
Probably because I'd be afraid of them rear-ending me, actually.
Yeah,
But
but
that's
New Yorkers are mean. I mean, they're gonna be like, "F you, buddy, get out of the road." Like, who are
well,
you? You're not the police.
well, yeah, exactly. Say somebody calls for a ghost and it's 5 o'clock traffic and whatnot. I'd be like, "We'll be there in 3 hours. Just hunker down and be safe. We got to go 4 blocks. We'll be there in 3 hours."
Yeah, they should have. I mean, a better vehicle was the Statue of Liberty and Ghostbusters 2. So they should have continued to do stuff like that.
You put things like the Millennium Falcon on this list. If I would have realized you were going that far out of the realm of what I consider like a movie vehicle, man, I should have put the Statue of Liberty on this list because that was a great iconic image to
Yeah,
Ghostbusters too.
I would say it's a vehicle. They're riding in it.
I would almost have to say that there are points of Ghostbusters 2 where the Statue of Liberty overshadows the Ecto one.
Well, I mean, it's huge, and you've never seen the Statue of Liberty walk like that.
Right?
All right, so yeah, that's the Ecto One Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
All right, so I have two left. You have one left.
And
Since
then
I took one.
yeah, and I'm guessing one of your two is probably the other one I have on my list.
The other one is not the one on your list.
Really? So go for it then.
Yes. Okay, so the next one I have on my list, it goes by many names. It is the '84 Sheepdog, the Shaggin' Wagon, the Mutt Cuts car from Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, my brain just popped a brain cell.
Good. Yeah, this is one of my top two movie vehicles of all time. Obviously, super iconic. No other car ever looks like the Mutt Cuts car from Dumb and Dumber.
No other car will ever look like that car.
I hope one day my car looks like that.
No, no,
There's
no.
so many iconic, obviously many iconic scenes involving the Mutt Cuts car. Of course, the opening of the scene, opening of the film where uh, Jeff Daniels is driving down the street with the dogs in the back and gives them all the gas station hot dogs. And all right, who's got the foot long? Who's got the foot long?
Oh,
Uh, then he
I ha-
arrives to he arrives to the place where they're showing off the dogs and they're all covered in ketchup. On second thought, you might just want to run a comb through them.
oh, you know what? I understand your appreciation and love for this movie, and I will not disagree with the fact that if there's something that comes out of that film, is the fact that people will recognize that car from that film. But oh, I do not understand why that movie gets so much love.
You are. I don't, Brian.
I'm
I
in the
think you
minority.
are definitely in the minority.
I will not argue that.
A funny thing is, we there was a question posted in our Facebook group, the South Dakota Film Community Group, asking people like, "What's your 10 movies if you could only ever watch these 10 movies?" And I think 95% of the people answering had Dumb and Dumber on that list.
I think you're over exaggerating your numbers.
It's pretty close. Most everyone had Dumb and Dumber on there. Yeah, it's a movie I have pretty much memorized. I love the movie. In my opinion, it's a perfect comedy. It knows exactly what it is, never anything more. And
I
of,
won't.
of course,
I will not argue that it knows exactly what it is. That it's a dumb, stupid comedy. And yes, I will laugh at times and whatnot, and I will agree with that weird ass car of theirs. But um, who's to say that the scooter doesn't have kind of just this kind of little bit of the same limelight as that? You know, everybody remembers the car because of, well, it's a great big bushy car and whatnot. But the little scooter that they ride and they freeze to.
yeah, I think that could be my point five on this list as well. My number 2.5 on this list is the little scooter that they drive and that Jim Carrey's character Lloyd trades in for the van and gets this stupid little moped traded in
Oh,
back in town.
exactly. Yes, I would have to go with
See,
that.
just when I thought you couldn't get any dumber, you go ahead and pull something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Oh God.
I love Dumb and Dumber. So yeah, that's my number two, the Shaggin' Wagon from Dumb and Dumber.
Oh my goodness. What am I gonna do with you? All
All
right.
right, Brian, let's get to your number one.
But see, here's my question. It's my number one. Shouldn't it be the number one of all cars that are the iconic cars from all the movies of all time?
No, well, not with the Shaggin' Wagon on this list, Brian. No.
Oh, that's a bunch of crap. Totally a bunch of crap.
This is I knew this one was going to come up, and this is definitely I knew right away when I said this is when we decided this was going to be the topic that this was your number one.
Let me guess. The Back to the Future DeLorean.
Yes.
Yes, yes, the DMC DeLorean. Because I mean, come on, it at that car when you make reference of the fact that the like say for instance that it is like the third character to the Bluesmobile is the third Blues brother to the two and all that kind of stuff whatever. There are times where I bet you people could probably recognize the DeLorean from Back to the Future before they could probably potentially name Marty McFly and Doc Brown, to the point where that vehicle's probably got more character that some people might remember if they're not into movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it is. It is probably the most iconic movie vehicle of all time.
Yes,
Everybody knows what the DeLorean is.
everybody does. I mean, there's an entire community, and that's not to say there isn't entire communities built around a lot of these cars and whatnot, but the community that is built around the hobbyists that build and recreate and restore not only just DeLoreans in general, but so that they actually modify them and retrofit them so that they are in fact basically studio replicas of the film DeLorean as opposed to just your basic everyday DeLorean.
Yeah, funnily enough, two of the vehicles that are on our list, the DeLorean and the Ecto One from Ghostbusters, both were at SuperCon this past year.
Yes, yes, they were. Yes,
So
they
talk
were.
about movie vehicles, and we got to see them live and in person.
Yes, because and that's to say is we got the 605 Ghostbusters here in town and the whatnot. Again another big community kind of driven around a whole franchise more than just the car and whatnot. But that could be also be said for Back to the Future. I mean that for me has been one of those movies that I will watch at any time it's on TV. I watch it multiple times a year, but maybe that's partly just because those are movies I grew up with, and they don't really date themselves because of the way that they're designed for the sake of the time periods. The only thing that really dates itself is that we're already past the future and Back to the Future 2, and we didn't get flying cars and whatnot, but That's an
The Biff future is better than 2020.
You know what? You're not wrong there. I almost want to put that as a hot take on the internet.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's just the truth.
I will take Biff Tanner as president of the United States over 2020.
Yep.
Oh, that is hilarious. But can we at least have the Biff Tanner where at least George McFly is still alive?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm better now.
All right. Would you say Back to the Future is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I always spin it this way when somebody asks me what is my favorite movie. If you want to say my ultimate favorite movie, just even from the point when I was a kid and whatnot, movie itself, we're talking Goonies. As a franchise, as for the sake of the trilogy that they are, I have to go with Back to the Future. Just because all three of those movies, when the first one was made, it wasn't originally potentially intended to be a trilogy and whatnot until they had the success of the first one. But just the three as a whole and just the way that they built them and designed everything to the point where any movie is going to have loopholes and whatnot, but I think they do a very good job of crossing their T's and dotting their I's for the sake of making sure that they have genuine continuity.
See, I figured this was how the list was going to go because I knew how much you love Back to the Future and how much it is one of your favorite movies of all time. And
Yes.
I think that definitely plays into this list heavily, what we prefer, like what our favorite movies are, and therefore the vehicles in them will play big parts into this list that we're coming up with here.
Oh, definitely.
All right. So yeah, that's your number one, the DeLorean Back to the Future.
Yes.
All right. My number one then is from my favorite movie of all time.
What?
This is the Mirthmobile from Wayne's World.
Okay, good. So, funny note, as we're talking about this, and I'm thinking of stuff and whatnot, and like, I'm literally, as we're talking about the Ecto One, I'm like, oh shit, I need to put this one on here. I literally put down the AMC Pacer from Wayne's World.
Yes. People ask me, everybody gets asked this question: "What is your dream car?" And everybody's like, "Oh, I'll take a Ferrari. I want a '70s Challenger, whatever." I'm like, "No, I want a 1976 AMC Pacer with flames on the side.
Here's
This
my
is my this
here's
is
my
my dream car. Period."
here's my question for you. Would you try to like in the sake of like Back to the Future, when you get your AMC Pacer, did you want to literally retrofit it to be exactly like the Mirthmobile? Like with
Oh,
so like for example, like you would have to have your red vines in the roof of the cabin. I actually had a guy that I went to high school with that actually did have the AMC Pacer that he was attempting to try to turn into the Mirthmobile, um, including putting an original 8-track player in the dash.
yeah. This is not an if; it's a when. When will I own an AMC Pacer? Because this is the car I will own at one point in my life. As Wayne says in the movie when he sees the guitar in the window, it will be mine. Oh yes, it will be mine.
It will be mine.
This will
Oh,
be my car. Flames included, the licorice dispenser, the 8-track player, the whole works, everything about it. Playing Bohemian Rhapsody on repeat, that will be my car. Yeah, Wayne's World is it's my. You always feel there's a little bit of a stigma with saying what your favorite movie is, especially if it's a movie that is just a fun popcorn movie, and I'm like, well, I should say like Citizen Kane is my favorite movie, or Jaws, or those the big of course movies of all time. And I'm like, well, no, Wayne's World's my favorite movie ever. Like, that's it. That's Wayne's World. Like, nothing else comes close. It's Wayne's World. So having that as my number one movie vehicle just makes so
oh, that
much sense to me.
makes total sense. And side note, just because you've mentioned it and whatnot, I've never seen Citizen Kane.
Brian,
For as
we
many
should do a Citizen Kane episode.
as for many movies that are in this world, I can't watch them all.
But it's Citizen Kane. It's the Citizen Kane of movies.
I know.
Well, funnily enough, the first time I watched Citizen Kane was in a media class in college, and we had about 20 students in the class or so. And my professor showed this movie every year, and he said, we'll take 3 days out of class, and we'll watch Citizen Kane, and then we'll talk about it after. And when we got to the end and we talked about it, the first thing he asked was, "What did everybody think?" And everybody's, "Eh." And then after, he's like, "Would any of you watch this movie again? Raise your hand." And I was the only one out of the 20 people that raised their hand. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I under like I was probably the oldest person in the class, and I was like 21. But it's like they were all like, "Oh, it's so boring. It's in black and white. Nothing happens." I'm like, "Did you not watch the movie? That you gotta watch
Right.
the character moments, understand what's happening." But yeah, I think we should watch Citizen Kane sometime and talk about it on the show.
Oh, we'll just have to see if we can find it available someplace. I mean, is
Uh,
it's an old enough movie. Is it in public domain?
Not yet. It's a few years away from that, but yeah, I think it's pretty readily available online though.
Well, at least you can rent or buy it. It looks like at least.
Yes, definitely worth it. Citizen Kane. If you bought Brian, you bought Ready to Rumble, you can buy Citizen Kane.
you're you're not wrong.
Yeah. All right. So yes, that is our top 10 movie vehicles of all time. These are our favorites. Let us know in the comments or on our Facebook page what your favorite movie vehicles of all time are, and if you could own any movie vehicle, what would it be?
DeLorean.
The Mirth Mobile. Because why not?
Agreed. Agreed. And then that goes with the DeLorean too, because and I would be one of those guys that if I was going to buy a DeLorean, I'd have to go through the effort and have it retrofitted to the point where I've got a Mr. Fusion on the back and I've got the time circuits on the front, all of that. Heck, I might even go as far as be like, let's modify it to like Back to the Future 3, so I've got like the hood uh revision from when they're in 1885, just to give us something maybe a little bit of a different look.
And you'll make it so it can actually time travel?
Yeah, I'm not that smart. I'm not Doc Brown.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up. You guys can find us and this podcast online on backlot605.com. You can find our latest movie news, reviews, and discussions on there. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, simply at backlot605. You can find this podcast and all of our other previous podcasts, as well as our Killer Countdown spin-off show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and YouTube. You can also join the South Dakota Film Community Group on Facebook as well. You can find our film friends Andy, the Fat Dude, at Fat Dude Digs Flicks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow our buddy Corey Jacobson at Somewhat Random Movie Collection on Instagram. And yeah, that's where you can find our buddies, and you can follow us online. You can find me on Instagram, Casey_the Horror Guy. Brian, where can people find you online?
People can find me on Instagram, which I apologize. I've been a little lax here these last week or so. It's been kind of, hunker down kind of stuff under LP Freak. Same as on Letterbox if anybody's interested. But yeah, that's pretty much where they can find me outside of Backlot 605 in the Sioux Falls, South Dakota film community.
We got to bring up one more thing here. That's because we are giving everybody a little homework. Homework for next week's episode. Yeah, but before one more thing before that, I'll tease the homework out. Brian, there's one thing we want to talk about at the end of these episodes, since we don't have any news or box office to talk about. We want to give quick recommendations to people. So, Brian, do you have a quick recommendation that is available on streaming for people to watch right now?
Well, I mean, we kind of alluded to it already, is the fact that I was starting to work on my binge for the sake of the Bond films, since we're kind of talking about those and whatnot. Is you can get everything pre Daniel Craig on Amazon Prime in HD and even into UHD if you've got that. Um, I would say, and actually one of the ones that I really I want to go back and watch. I've never seen it before. It looks very wild. You can actually watch it on Vudu free with ads. Is called a movie called The Voices, and
Oh, the
it
Ryan Reynolds one.
the Ryan Reynolds one, which it always
Fun.
intrigued me. It's rated very well, and I like seeing Ryan Reynolds kind of get outside of the box sometimes, and I think this is one of the ones where it kind of play just from the description, it plays in the Ryan Reynolds world in terms of the kind of person he is, but I think it's kind of definitely one of those ones that it's maybe not many people even know it exists because it's not your atypical Ryan Reynolds film.
Yeah, Voices it's pretty fun.
Yeah, when I figured out that because I was like, well, who voices the dog? Who voices the cat? Oh, he does it all. That's
He does,
amazing.
yeah.
That is amazing.
I'm going to give kind of a 3-part recommendation this week. All 3 of these are available on Shudder right now, the streaming service Shudder.
You and your
I'm going to
Shudder.
give a recommendation to the original Exorcist, obviously one of the greatest horror films ever made, and one of the scariest ever as well. And then I'll also recommend Exorcist 3 as a follow-up to that. Very much a worthy follow-up sequel to the first Exorcist. You don't need to watch Exorcist 2. It doesn't count.
It doesn't
But
count.
Exorcist, yeah, it doesn't count. It ignores Exorcist 3 pretty much ignores everything post the first Exorcist. So yeah, Exorcist 3, very worthy follow up. I very much I would say for people who don't think The Exorcist, the original, is that scary, go watch Exorcist 3. This kind of, I think it picks up the pace a little faster than the first film did. And then along with that, I'll give a shout out to the Cursed Films documentary series that Shudder is running. They just had their first episode last week on The Exorcist. So I'll give a recommendation. Go watch that 30-minute documentary about the cursed films of including The Exorcist and The Exorcist and The Exorcist 3. To The Exorcist a lot.
That is a lot. That is a lot. That was a mouthful.
That was a mouthful. And all right, let's get to our homework for next week. Next week's homework, we're going to kick off. I believe this is kind of the first time we're doing this. We're going to call it our spotlight episodes. So we're going to focus on one single movie, deep dive into that, the meanings, the themes, if it has that. In this case, I think it does, from what I remember, and that is the 2001?
For the film?
Yeah. I'll look it up here. Give me a second. Hold on.
2002?
2002? It is the 2002 Christian Bale film, available right now on Netflix, Equilibrium.
Yes.
So that will be next week's episode. We will do a deep dive into that film. As we said, available right now on Netflix. So that is your homework for next week. And we will both be doing a refresher watch in this as well.
Yes, we will.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up. We want to thank you guys once again for listening. We hope you are all safe, healthy, stay home, watch more movies. That is our recommendation.
Well, I like that recommendation. Stay home and watch movies.
Stay home, watch movies. Anyway,
take a shower.
For Backlot 6, what's that?
Take a shower every once in a while.
Just every once in a while. Take the movie in the shower with you, whatever. Just reenact the scene from Psycho in the shower by yourself. Yes. Anyway, for Backlot 605, I'm Casey.
I'm Brian.
And we'll see you next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.
Woohoo!